now we have got epigenetics. It has come back to the Sanatana Dharma where it says everything is environmental. And so beautifully it said, you are not the child of your parents. You have come through your parents, that's all. And this is absolutely true genetically because you have only 23,000 genes in a metagenome from human beings, but 2.5 trillion germ genes, which means we are more of germs kids and we have come here from germs and we have evolved through our home. And evolution is environmental and the best environment he had as a child. And he can't be corrupt, he can't be bad, but he has to do very hard work because his father also was doing good work. Kadir, welcome to you. And it gladdens my heart to know this man who was the health minister of the state has come to Naturopathy College for his treatment. Congratulations. Madam Swain from the National Institute of Health and Family Welfare. It's a beautiful building on the main road and you have a nice board in front and what happens inside I don't know, but something good must be happening. Our friend who was an old student, Naveen, who is now an internationally known professor and teacher all over the world, and my good friend Prashant Shetty, your principal, who is like a leech, does not take no for an answer. I told him I can't come to Ujjire today, I am so much tied up. He says, no sir, you must come. And I told him no and put the phone down and went somewhere. After 2 days when I come back, he is there again and says, you are coming. And ultimately I am here and I am happy to be here because not only seeing the students, but seeing our guests. And here I see an opportunity for the future because for the last about half a century, I have been trying to say that there should not be any caste system in healing process. Healing is a process and your own body heals. Remember that? We are so proud sometimes, especially the rich Western medical doctors, you talk to them, my God, you just don't know. They think they are doctors, they are gods. And they think that only Western medicine can cure the ills of mankind. Actually one plastic eye surgeon, I didn't understand what he is doing. Anyway, he is a plastic eye surgeon he calls. He wrote a blog against me. He says, I respect him. He was my teacher, but he is a fool because he thinks Ayurveda is science. If anybody thinks Ayurveda is science, he must be a fool, he wrote. I am happy about that because that shows how the old saying, all wise people know they are fools, but a fool thinks he is wise, is how true it is. And he went on to say that he says he likes Ayurveda. What has he done for Ayurveda? He is asking me, without knowing what I have done for Ayurveda. That's the interesting part. Did he send any one of his children to Ayurveda college? Why is he supporting Ayurveda? Modern medicine is the only future. See, an eye doctor, that too he says he is plastic eye doctor. Maybe he is only working plastic eyes, not human eyes. But the problem is this, that he doesn't know anything outside that realm. This is the bane of the Western science of reductionism. You know, reductionism, you look at the world in bits and pieces, that's called reductionism. If you look at the world in bits and pieces, you don't understand the world at all. You have to look at the world as a whole, that's called the holistic science. And today, science has come back to Indian wisdom. Did you know that? The latest science is, there's a lot of echoing here, can you hear me? I want the young students to listen to this very carefully. The latest science is quantum physics. There was a worldview on which we work, which is called the Newtonian, Einsteinian worldview of reductionism. The space-time says time and space, the fastest is the speed of light, etc., etc. And the world is like a clock which is there, it unwinds itself on its own and it doesn't require anybody to do anything. Very interesting. Based on this, Western institutions have built huge establishments. big universities. They started off in probably Vienna in the 18th century, then came back to Europe, and Cambridge, Oxford, and so many other universities came. Trinity College in Dublin. These are all very old universities. They all are built on this worldview, Newtonian, Einsteinian worldview, where everything is absolutely right. Now this view has been proved to be wrong, and thinking people inside science have been thinking about changing science, and they have went ahead. The first man who did that was Max Planck, who nearly 100 years ago said, this science is inadequate. Then of course came the next generation and the present generation who found out all this, led by a man called Hans-Peter Dürr, who was the Max Planck Institute director in Munich for about 40 years. This man found out for the first time. He is a nuclear scientist, a PhD in nuclear science, and he found out his boss was making bombs, and he left the boss and came back to Germany. He was in America studying for his PhD when he was young, and he was studying with Edward Teller, who was the father of the hydrogen bomb. When he found out this man was making hydrogen bomb, which would destroy the whole world, he left and came back and joined his old institute, the Max Planck Institute, which is now called the Werner Heisenberg Institute in Munich. And his colleague was Werner Heisenberg himself. And the one scientist who said the first truth very loudly and got the Nobel Prize was Werner Heisenberg. His teacher was Albert Einstein. Your textbooks that you read says Albert Einstein is a great brain, his brain must be preserved, he is nobody like that, he is a scientist, blah, blah, blah. But the truth is totally different. See, this is what's called reality. You are fed education today. That's why I asked the word education. What's education? Educe is the etymological root, Latin root. Educe, E-D-U-C-E, is to deliver. Educe is deliver. So education is delivering the wisdom inside man out and polishing. That's called education. Make every human being a real human being. That's called education. Do you understand that? But what education are we giving today? Indoctrination. Indoctrination. Whatever you want the student to learn, you teach him. History. What is history? The different powers in the past, the governments in the past, they wrote whatever they want to write, and they had their own historians write history. And history is what the historian writes, which means most history is wrong. Do you understand that? Similarly, science. Science is indoctrination. 2 into 2 is 4. Right? Any doubt? That's what you are told in the class. Did you know that you and I, when we were born, had the capacity to smell things and find out for ourselves like a dog? And we are much better than the dog. But today, do we use a man to smell anything? We use a dog. Why? Man has lost his sense of smell because the indoctrination. Lot of wrong things are taught to you right from school days. Please remember, 2 into 2 need not be 4. It could be 4, it could be 5, it could be 6. This is what is called the uncertainty principle. The first wisdom to Western science came in the year 1925 when sitting in the class of Albert Einstein in Zurich Polytechnic, this young boy stood up and said, "Sir, what you're talking through your hat. All that is wrong. E is equal to mc squared, blah, blah, blah." He said, "It's all wrong." Now what will happen to a student who gets up in a class in the Zurich Polytechnic and tells his Nobel laureate, to his professor, that you are wrong? What will happen to that student? Any idea? No? No? Can't you imagine? Supposing you get up in your class and tell Prashant Saab, what you are talking through is your head, it's all wrong. What will happen to you? Huh? Correct. You will become an outstanding student. So, Werner Heisenberg was an outstanding student of physics in 1925. For how many years he was outstanding? For 30 long years. 30 long years. To tell the truth is very difficult. I told you how the plastic eye surgeon scolded me. Yesterday one surgeon scolded me in a flog, saying that he's a bloody fool, he doesn't know anything, and because of him, we all suffer. What is suffering? They think business, it's a business. Medical practice is a business, which it should not be, because our own father of modern medicine, Western medicine, Hippocrates said, never try to make money in the sick room. Remember that? Never try to make money in the sick room. If any one of you, the MBBS and MD fellows, with the MBBS itself, it's difficult to talk to them after that. If you have an MD, then you have to have a special appointment to talk. So don't have that hubris, that arrogance, that pride, that ego. That is killing science, that is killing knowledge. Be humble. What I know is nothing. What I don't know is everything. So beautifully said by our ancestors. In Tamil there is a beautiful saying. Any Tamilians here? Good. Therima? Therinjadu kaiyalavu. Theriyathathu ulagalavu. What is known can be held in the hand. What is not known is universal. So beautiful. Now here was a very wise man, Johann Goethe, who was the wisest German ever born. And he had everything. He had qualifications, MD, PhD, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, in every field. One day he gets up and says, I now know everything. I know physiology, philosophy, jurisprudence, even, alas, theology, sister, from end to end with labor scheme. But here I stand, O fool, with all my lore, no wiser than before. Did you understand that? Now this is what happened to me about 45, 50 years ago. When I came back, I was in Harvard, I was here, there, all kinds of, that is what he was going to read, all that, that's not important. I have been a student of human health and human illness since 1956. How many years? Long before our parents were born. And would you believe, I am as confused as I am, if not more, today than 60 years ago when I joined the medical school. I thought I knew everything when I passed my MBBS. When I passed my MD, I thought I had everything. When I went and passed my British exams, all exams, and then American exams, etc., then I thought nobody knows as much as I know. That arrogance was in my head, I tell you. I'm telling you because it will help you. And with that arrogance, I came back, became an assistant professor, this, that, and all. One day, a patient was brought dead in our intensive care unit at about 2 o'clock in the morning. Patient was dead, young man, who was so fanatic about his health. He was getting a checkup done almost every 3 months. He was 34 years old, just married with a wife who was 30 years old. Now that morning at 2 o'clock, he just drops down dead in the bed. The wife thinks he is still alive, brings him to the hospital. And when the doctors tell her that he is dead, she does not believe that. She refuses to believe that. And she fights. So these boys called me and said, sir, you better come. It was 3 o'clock in the morning. So I said, okay. So I went to the hospital. This is a large government hospital where we have a lot of patients. And I had gone at 2 o'clock, I didn't have put on my shoes. I was having my chappal and went into the minute she saw me, she was rolling on the floor. She caught hold of my leg tight at the ankle. It was so tight, I thought I'll fracture my legs. Then she asked me one question, one simple question. Why did my husband die, doctor? Can you believe that? What was the question? Why did my husband die, doctor? Because we conventionally say if you have a regular checkup, if you don't eat anything, and as Vaishnavar was telling this boy not to eat because he has got a tummy, little big tummy. So, why he had no tummy at all. Actually, his tummy was touching his back. And this man is athletically fit, running every day, etc., but drops down dead. This lady had a very vital question. Why did my husband die, doctor? I was completely nonplussed. For the first time I said, you bloody fool, answer that question. I had no answer. Absolutely no answer. I could tell her how her husband died. I would give her a big lecture, most of it is wrong, saying that atherosclerosis, those days we were saying cholesterol, of course for the last 50 years I was saying cholesterol is good. People were thinking I was mad. but now the American government thinks cholesterol is good, then they think, oh, this fool was selling that 50 years ago. Anyway, coming back to it, all this I could talk to her. Atherosclerosis, blocks in the vessels, even a child has blocks in the vessel, that's a different story. All this I could tell, but why did he die at 35? I have patients with coronary artery disease jugging on at 90. I had a patient who had a heart attack in 1964 when he was 65, and the day I saw him at night at about 3 o'clock, his heart was like a gunny bag. So according to our textbook's wisdom at that time, he should not live long because heart is big, and I told the relatives, and I told his children, they were all my old students, they were in England, America and all doctors, I told them, look, your father won't live long. All according to our textbooks. This man lived for 35 more years. How many years? 35 more years, and died at the age of 95. And in between his wife died and he married a young lady at the age of 75 and procreated. Of course, maternity is a matter of certainty, but paternity is a matter of opinion, so that's a different thing. But he did beget a child. Now what I am saying is, predicting the unpredictable future based on our faulty science is 100% wrong. I remember a patient who came the other day, saw me and said, doctor, they said I have 3 vessel disease, and my doctor kept on saying that unless I have bypass surgery, that the end will come very soon. But do you know, sir, I am very happy today. What happened? The doctor died. And he was so happy that the doctor died. So, future can never be predicted. And this I learned before quantum physics came and said, there is no future. Future is yet to be born. There is no tomorrow. So don't think of tomorrow. And yesterday is dead. Don't think of yesterday. Think of today, present. God has given you a present. Now come back to arrogance. Arrogance is the problem. We are integrating various systems of medicine. Because the modern medical firm, who we call ourselves modern, the Western medical man thinks Western medicine is something high. You know, you go to Delhi, whom do the people talk about? Trihans and this ones and that ones, because there are tons of money. It is money that makes you speak about them, not what they do. That's a different thing. If you really go and find out what they do, it is horrible inside. But they have made money, tons of money. They are big people, you know. Whoever talks about big money only. How they make money, nobody tries to find out. Ever since money came to this existence in this world, mankind is suffering. Did you know that? 1802, the first industry started in England. And this poet, romantic British poet called William Wordsworth. Have you heard of William Wordsworth? Oh, good. He wrote a poem. Have you heard of that poem? That's called The World is Too Much With Us. Anyone heard of the poem? The World is Too Much With Us. He wrote it in 1802. I'll give you 4 lines. It's a fascinating poem. Go back and read the rest of the lines. He said, world is too much with us, late and soon, comma. Getting and spending, we lay waste our powers, comma. Little do we see in nature that is ours. This line is very important. Little do we see in nature that is ours. Naturopathy comes from nature and that is yours. Did you understand that? When did he write that? 1802. Last line. We have sold our soul. I added 2 words to the devil, comma, a sordid boon. You know the English language? Sordid boon are 2 words which imply hell of a lot of things. It's such a horrible curse, he says. What? Money. And today, making money is our religion. And probably our God is money. We try to make money in everything. Try to make money out of the sick room, which we have made a corporate business today. If you believe in the karma theory, which has been now scientifically proven in the lab experiments, you will have to reap the harvest because you are robbing a patient in distress. All his property. Knowing full well we can't cure a cancer patient, we still assure him, we have very good treatment, come. And after about 10 days when he dies, the bill is about 50 lakhs and the patient and the dead body and the bill has to be given. Now this is our business. So friends, younger generation from Delhi, Bhopal, Andhra, MD, all of you must know one thing. The day you shed your ego, you will be able to mix with naturopaths, Ayurvedas, Yajurvedas. Even quackery is okay as long as the quack has a kind heart. Let me tell you something very seriously. It's not the degree that matters. It is not what you have studied that matters. It is not the pati that matters. Whether it's allopathy, Ajopathy, this pati, homeopathy, that pati. No. It is how good a human being a doctor is. That matters a lot. If you are a good human being, you command the respect of the patient. When once you command the respect of the patient, we all demand the respect of the patient. I am a doctor, everybody must salute me. No. Command. They must feel you are worthy of respect. You are worthy of having faith in you. The word faith, F-A-I-T-H, is the most important thing in medicine. Not what you have learned about pathology. Pathology is studying the tombstone. You take a biopsy, then smear it on the glass slide, squeeze it so the cells are distorted, then poison it with hematoxin and eosin, and then rise it under the microscope. What do you see? The dead cells. That is why today we don't know what cancer is. Cancer is studied from the slide, and we classify grade 1, grade 2, grade 3. The biggest biologist in the world who got 2 Nobel Prizes, his name is Albert Szent-Györgyi, has written a beautiful book for all of you to read. He says, Introduction to Submolecular Biology, where he says, I quote, I don't know what cancer is. Where the cancer cell works exactly like a normal cell. Cancer cell is your own body cell, which is wandering all over the body because the environment has become so difficult for it to survive where it is. And in the bargain, it may put seedlings all over the place. Before it manifests in an organ, it has already manifested in so many organs in the body. See how important it is. Now our science is so ridiculous. Now let us say, it's an open hall now. A bird comes in here, sits on that projector. Now you call a scientist and say, why did this bird come here? Where is it going? What is it supposed to do? Do you know what he will do? He will catch hold of the bird, kill it, and make slides of it, and look at this and say, this bird has come from maybe a far off place. It is come to see all of you and see what the thing is happening. And this kind of a ridiculous thing, this is called reductionist science. What he says is, I don't know how any human being can kill a cancer cell without killing normal cells. How true? Every anti-cancer drug kills more of the body's immune system than the, but you can develop the immune system, and if your immune system is developed, cancer gets killed. So the whole science has to change into holistic science. This is called immune system development. That is what Ayurveda's basis is all about. Swasthasya swastha rakshitam. Preserve the wellness of the healthy people. Very profitable. Day before yesterday I was with the PM, I was telling him that future plan for integration of various systems. So he said, आप सब लिख के मुझे दे दीजिएगा, मैं सोच के बाद में आपको बुलाऊंगा. So you have to do, this is a very important thing. What I do is, first thing, do you know what we do? This is my plan which I have been practicing. You must have a nurse trained to make a diagnosis first. In every taluka hospital, we must have a modern medical man, because modern medicine is also important for quick fixes. You can't throw it out. If the water is bad in modern medicine, you can't throw the baby in the bathtub also out. Keep the water only out, get fresh water. So modern medicine, Ayurveda, naturopathy, Unani, and all other systems, homeopathy, everyone. Each one will be a consultant there. Basic degree, MBBS, or a BA, HMS or whatever. And they all sit around a table in the outpatient department at Taluka Hospital. Patient comes first, the nurse classifies the patient. There are a lot of beautiful nurse practitioner training is there in the Western countries. Today, nurse can do a biopsy, nurse can do endoscopy, nurse can look into various things, and nurse can even prescribe medicines. You require 1 year's extra training, what's called nurse practitioner, We train our nurses for 6 months. I've got a training course. This girl will sit there, and when a patient comes, she will classify the patient. There are various types of patients. Now, what is important is 1% of patients, remember that, require Western, high-tech, modern medicine. Like for example, somebody has a heart attack, somebody has collapse, somebody has a stroke, somebody has diabetic coma. They require high-tech quick fixes just to tide them over. For long-term case, diabetes doesn't get treated with Western medicine. But for a quick diabetic coma to come out, you require that. Somebody has a heart attack, to save him at that time, you require modern medicine. But long-term treatment of coronary artery disease can be any system. So what she does is she filters that 1% and sends it to the Western medical patient. The 99% remaining patients, 90% of them are called minor illness syndromes. You would just sit in an open hospital outpatient, large hospital outpatient, 90% of them are minor illness syndromes, only 4 diseases. Common cold, feverish cold, sore throat, flu-like illness. You in the MBBS class were not taught about these 4. I can take a bet. But you are taught about coronary arteries, the end arteries, whether they are end arteries, whether their collaterals are there, whether they can communicate or not. What does it matter? Whether it's adenocarcinoma, anaplastic, metastatic, what does it matter? Every cancer is metastatic. It is already metastasized before you see it in an organ. 50% of the ductal carcinoma in situ is not cancer at all. 100% of the follicular cancers in the thyroid in young girls is not cancer at all. Half the so-called prostatic cancers are not cancer at all. These are all what are called incidentalomas. Incidentally you find it because you have got scanning. Scanning is a curse. We all didn't know. If you don't know scanning, you don't know you've got a cyst in the ovary. But when you go for a scanning, the doctor will say, there is a cyst in the ovary. Is there any woman without a cyst in the ovary? Just imagine the physiology. Every month a ovum comes out and it doesn't become a fetus. Sometimes it doesn't come out, it remains there. It becomes a cyst. But what does the scanner say? Don't worry, you have a scan, it's okay. As you are living, he'll say, but occasionally it can become a cancer. You are dead. Such ridiculous things we do because we go too far into it. Remember that? Today the new disease. Every girl who works in IT industry has got PCOD. And PCOD is polycystic ovarian disease. Then what is it? It is in the mind. You must be in the IT industry to know how difficult it is to be in the IT industry in India. Because you are meant to work for 3 persons. There is no time limit, not 9 to 5. And you got to work so hard, all the time looking at that idiot box called the computer. You can't even look this way, that way. You have no exercise at all. For your information's sake, sitting for 1 hour, doing nothing, is more dangerous than smoking for the heart's health. Today, sitting is supposed to be more dangerous than smoking. And walking for 1 hour is probably the best tonic for your heart. But we don't tell people about this. And a lot of us think sitting is good. If you go to American IT industry, boys and girls don't sit, they stand and do it. And even standing, they can't stand still. There's a slow moving belt underneath. So if you don't move, you will fall down. So this is what we don't do. And we kill our children. Just tension. And then PCOD. One girl came to me about 10 years ago, PCOD. You know, she was about 90 kilos. She was like a football. And not menstruating at all and things like that. So I told her and her obsessive mother, you want your daughter to be alright? She said, yes. Ask her to resign her job. She said, doctor, she's getting a lakh of rupees. I said, how many lakhs she has collected so far? And how many you have spent on doctors now? You collect all those lakhs and give it all to the corporate hospitals. Are you happy? This girl left her job. And today she is a specimen of good health. She still has got a good job. She has almost got a lakh of rupees pay. But she has absolutely no problem. This is where we fail. So the nurse says, this is minor illness syndrome. I can bet most of you won't know the difference between common cold and feverish cold. Let us see. It's very simple. Anybody? What's the difference between common cold and feverish cold? See, This is our medical education, the topsy-turvy medical education. We teach uncommon diseases where money can come in a very detailed, over-detailed fashion. We don't teach ordinary diseases, and people suffer more because of ordinary diseases. Do you know, on a given day in Europe, in winter, 50 million people cannot go to work because of a simple disease called feverish cold. 50 million people. And sick absenteeism of 50 million people is economic liability to the whole nation. And today what we do? Feverish cold. He comes to the very arrogant modern doctor. He sits there. Oh, don't worry. You have a viral fever probably. I will give you an antibiotic. You will be alright. Do you know what he has done? 3 things he has done. A, he doesn't know whether it is viral fever because he has not seen the virus. If an Ayurvedic doctor says this is something, he will say, where is the proof? Where is evidence? And where is your evidence? Doctors predicting the unpredictable future of patients is a nice study for all of you. Write down. Doctors predicting the unpredictable future of patients. It's in the BMJ. Write down. It's written by a scientist, William John Firth. And this is in the BMJ, year 1991, volume 303, and page is 1565. Please read this. Read it 10 times. Then all your ego will melt down. Whatever you predict is wrong. And this is because there is no future prediction in science. They say today there will be heavy rains in Mangalore, according to the prediction. It will certainly not rain today, it will rain tomorrow. This is called unpredictable future of patients. And this the scientists are calling as butterfly effect. Because they don't say we are wrong. They have another hypothesis. Edward Lorenz, who found out how to predict weathers, after finding out that the weather prediction never comes true, propounded a hypothesis called butterfly effect. Do you know what he said? After I put all my data into my supercomputer, if a butterfly moves its wings in Beijing in China, disturbing the air, that can compound with the Lyapunov effect into a storm in New York after 1 month, which I can't calculate. In Kobe in Japan, they have the best meteorological laboratory. Even seconds before that huge earthquake which killed half the population of Kobe, nobody knew. It just came. So friends, let us be humble first. So the nurse will say, okay, this is feverish cold. The best treatment for that is either homeopathy or probably ginger and garlic, and she will send it to the homeopath. See how much money you have saved? In France, they started a 100-bedded Chinese hospital. The NHS cost has come down by 50% because all the minor illness syndromes go to the Chinese hospital. So otherwise they would have come to the main hospital. And 4 things if you do for keeping health. A, clean drinking water. Clean drinking water. 40% of the hospital beds can be closed. 3 square meals, uncontaminated human and or animal excreta, 10% gone. Proper nutrition, another 10% gone. And good air, smokeless chula, so that the woman doesn't get the smoke into the house with the carbon monoxide. And then you just have some economic empowerment of ladies in the village. Today a man earns, drinks and eats and comes home with empty stomach, empty pocket. So the lady can sleep without food, but she can't see children sleeping without food. Looking at your own child who is compelled to sleep without food kills you of a heart attack. Did you know that? The biggest problem of heart attack is not cholesterol, but the mind. Not knowing where your next meal comes from kills you left, right and center. There is a large study done in England or industries. The managing directors rarely get a heart attack. The chairman hardly gets heart attack. But the man on the floor who has no control about his life's economy, he gets a heart attack. Managing director can manage, he has a lot of money. The poor man doesn't know how much money he will earn and how much he will need for family and him. That kills him. In short, your mind is the cause of all diseases. And where is the mind? Where is the mind? Let us see. All the MBBS, MD doctors, where is the mind? Yes, Delhi. Pink shirt. No, next one. Handsome young man between the 2 girls. Go on. Where is the mind? Oh, where did he hear? Anyway, let me tell you, where is the mind? Never mind. But the mind is not in the brain. Remember that. Mind is not in the brain. The man who found out that the mind is in the brain and got a Nobel Prize for that, Wilder Penfield, is the same man who in 1971 wrote a paper, I am sorry for saying the mind is in the brain, and mind cannot be in an organ. Mind is not, one thought cannot be in the brain. Forget about it. In spite of 1 billion cells and 1 trillion neuron synapses, it is consciousness. The whole world has one mind, and you have your mind called individual consciousness. That is how you and I are connected. That's how a good teacher knows which student is cheating in the class. If you're a good teacher, know the students very well, you know exactly what a student is doing in the class. And this is very interesting. There's a nice book for all of you to read, for evening reading. Scientific book by one of the greatest scientists in Cambridge. And this book is called Dogs Know When the Owners Are Coming Home. Have you read that book? Rupert Sheldrake is this famous scientist, Rupert Sheldrake, and is a very big scientist in Cambridge. After he wrote this book, he has been dismissed from Cambridge University as a professor. Because he is told the truth. You can't tell the truth. The girl who showed that mind is not the seat of brain, because she showed for the first time that opiate receptors are outside the brain, and this girl should have got the Nobel Prize. She was tipped to get the Nobel Prize, but her boss added his name in the beginning, and he wanted to get the Nobel Prize for the work she has done. But this girl was a fighter. She went to the Nobel Committee and said, it's my work, and he has stolen it. So neither the boss nor the girl got the Nobel Prize, but what the girl got in return was dismissed from the NIH, National Institute of Health. National Institute of Health is like the palace in America, highest body. You know, where everybody in India, for example, sits in the ICMR or ICAR or this and that. Like that, the NIH is the highest body. And this girl lost her job. But this girl wrote a book for all of you, Molecules of Emotion. What's the book's name? Molecules of Emotion. What's her name? Candace Pert. And this book is getting her millions of dollars, and she is a very big celebrity now all over the world. But she showed that the mind is not in the brain. And all the diseases are in the mind. And when you know that, you can change your mind to change your body. Your body is your mind. Remember that? In quantum physics, matter is energy, energy is matter. It's not different. This was found out by Hans-Peter Dürr way back in 2004. When he wrote the paper and got the Nobel Prize. His paper you can read. Matter is not made out of matter. Please read that. It's for lay people. Matter is not made out of matter. And his name is Hans, H-A-N-S, Peter, P-E-T-R, D-U-R-R, Dürr. And he writes, I quote, I'm a nuclear scientist. What's my job? Look at matter at its subtlest level. I've been doing it for 55 years. One day I find there is no matter at all. So I call it as the A duality and get my Nobel Prize. But look at these Indian sages who counted thousands of years ago as Advaita and described quantum physics in one stanza, and I am their student. Who writes that? Today if you say that, they'll say you must be a saffron or something like that in India. You know, all our English educated people think Indian is bad. Most of us are RNIs. Do you know RNI? Resident non-Indians. We sit here and think with American brain. Now Americans think with Indian brain. And Hans-Peter Dürr says, I learned science from the Indian wisdom. And one sentence he describes the whole of quantum physics. Bahirantascha bhutanam. Energy is inside and outside of everything. Charam acharame vacha. Energy is all the time moving. You all look solid. You are not nothing solid about you. You are a bundle of jumping leprechauns. But you look solid. That's called Maya. He so beautifully describes that. Sukshmavate tavijnayam. It is so subtle that nobody can see it. No scientist till today has seen an electron. But we describe an electron. People have got Nobel Prize for saying electrons are particles. His own son after 30 years got a Nobel Prize for saying electrons are waves. And some other person said electrons are wavicles, waves and particles. And electrons are, we don't know what they are. Everybody got Nobel Prize. But the truth is, nobody has seen an electron. Nobody can see an electron. Sukshmavate tavijnayam. No vijnana, no science can find out an electron for the simple reason. Can you see God? No. Have you seen God? Have you felt God? Ah, good. God cannot be seen like electron. But you can feel the electron. If there is no electron, what I speak here you will not hear. It's all electrons, but I can't see the electron, because to see anything, supposing I want to see Kader, a few photons in Kader's body must leave and come and hit my eye, then only I can see. Then he becomes aware. He becomes, I am aware of Kader's presence. But if one electron leaves, one neutron, photon leaves an electron changes. So by the time you see, it's a different thing. That is why Werner Heisenberg said PQ is not equivalent to QP. That's called the uncertainty principle, the greatest thing in science. He says 2 into 3 may be 6 now, but 3 into 2 need not be 6. PQ is not equivalent to QP. You can't know the electron at all. When once you know all these things, and once you understand the human mind, and that's where I think every system of medicine teaching must have 1 year of human psychology teaching. Whether you're MBBS, BMS, naturopathy, homeopathy, anypathy, you must be taught to have sympathy and empathy. And when you have empathy and sympathy, I'll tell you 2 experiments recently done to show how true this is. They found, now Western science has found out its hollowness and is trying to go in search of old wisdom. Now scientists are studying a race of people called Simane are a group of aboriginals living in the Amazon forest, deep down in the Amazon forest, hundreds of miles inside. They have not touched reality. They don't have clothes, but they live up to 100, 120 years. They deliver there, no cesarean section. Children are all alive, and they live 100 years. Now scientists are slowly going there to find out how they are living. Of course, it's very difficult because they are ferocious people. They think you are all this, the dress, they think you are something fancy dress and you are not human beings. They are absolutely naked, stark naked. But scientists are befriending them. A few scientists were killed by them, but still scientists are befriending and find out how they found. They found one thing. Their mind is absolutely filled with love. So no disease can enter them. I used to have a grandfather who died at the age of 98, and he was a big eater. That's why I always think people must eat. If they want to eat, they should eat. He was a very big eater. And whenever we as children got cold or cough or something like that, he'll call us and say, "You idiots, because you don't eat full. You eat half stomach, then cold enters." I mean, his theory. We may laugh at it, but I think he's right. And he says, "I eat full, how can cold enter?" So this is what the Simanes do. Simanes eat well, but they fill their mind with universal love. So now doctors think, scientists think, it's the mind that controls your health. What is health? What is health? Let's see. Bhopal kya? Nahin. Mental well-being. Good. Any other definitions? Very good, very good. You are better than the common rut. The common rut says Alma Ata definition of 1947, absence of physical, mental, spiritual, psychological, environmental, blah 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 disease. Do you know why this definition was given? This is a business definition. If you want to know if you are healthy, you must go and check up. When you check up, you become a patient. Did you know that? You didn't know. Because we don't have anything called normal in the humans. We have average. I will give you what is the normal height of an Indian male. We take 1,000 males and distribute graph. It's called a bell curve, Gaussian curve. Good girl. Now we artificially put a statistical mean plus 2 standard deviation and say 5.4 is average. But then we make it as normal. When once you say normal, anything other than that is abnormal, right? That's what happens. What is your blood sugar? Blood sugar depends on the company's needs. When more companies need it, it comes down and comes down and comes down. When we were students, we were taught blood sugar is 200 postprandial and 120 fasting. And after 10 years, it came to 180 to 100. Now it came down further to 140 and 80. And it's coming down. Blood pressure also like that. So when you write to them and find out why it is coming down, they say we have evidence base. What is evidence? Nothing, except that they have got millions of dollars from the drug companies to lower it. And very interestingly, the JNC8, the latest blood pressure committee, has now raised the blood pressure normal. It was coming down to 110/70. Now the JNC8 says normal blood pressure must be 159/99. So I wrote to the chairman, I know him, Marvin Mosser. I said, why did you take 9? Because there is no 9 in the blood pressure apparatus. Either it is 8 or 10, 100, 10. Why 9? Then he says, in your book on blood pressure, 1993, you wrote normal blood pressure was 160/100. We can't copy that. So we made it 159/99. This is interesting. And if you do that, millions of people will be removed from the blood pressure list for treatment. A study in British Medical Journal 3 months ago showed we have killed 15 million people by unnecessarily treating blood pressures which are normal. It's called mild to moderate hypertension. There's nothing called mild to moderate hypertension. If you know how to check the blood pressure, most patients, if not all patients, will become normotensives when once you show them compassion. They are frightened of you. Why did the blood pressure ever was given to us? Do you know in nature? We were hunter-gatherers in the forest. And when you see a tiger coming, that's the cause of your death. Only tiger or snake or something like that. So you see the tiger, you get frightened. You must run away. If you have to run away, your blood pressure must go up, otherwise you can't run. So nature said, okay, let him have a sympathetic system. So he'll have adrenaline. When you see the tiger, you run. And blood pressure goes up, you run, blood pressure comes down. Today we have the same tigers in society. Your boss may be a tiger, your husband may be a tiger, your wife may be a tiger, your colleague may be a tiger, your junior may be a tiger. So you see this tiger, your blood pressure goes up. But you can't run because you have to live with the boss. Supposing you see Prashant as a tiger in the college, all of your blood pressure will go up. He is a nice boy, that's a different thing. He is a good boy. He is so nice, unlike a tiger. But if you see a tiger and live with the tiger, supposing your husband is a tiger and you have to live with him, your blood pressure is always up. If your wife is a tigress and you have to live with her, your blood pressure is up. Our modern medical treatment is give a chemical and record it low. That's no good. We have what is called surrogate research. Surrogate reductionist research, which says, I have given this tablet, his blood pressure has come down. What has happened to him? We don't know. Today we know some of the blood pressure lowering tablets are the ones which are giving stroke. Today we know a simple aspirin which you used to give to every patient saying that you are 40, you take an aspirin. It increases heart attack incidence by 190%. 190%. And so now we don't even give aspirin in patients with atrial fibrillation. We give them some warfarin. What I am saying is, unless you keep your eyes and nose wide open, you don't know what's happening in this world. So I call all those people as 21st century illiterates. You know what is illiteracy? Not knowing writing and reading. One who cannot unlearn what he has learned and relearn the right things. He is an illiterate. And today, don't be an illiterate in medicine. The reality today is, if you want to treat all health problems, you require all systems of medicine. You don't know how cheap and how easy to treat upper respiratory infections. Two small, simple homeopathic medicines. It will bring down Kadar's budget by several crores. Because every upper respiratory infection today in the hospital gets an antibiotic. So the cost is gone up. Number two, when you give antibiotic to a viral disease, the immune system changes from T1 to T1-1, which is all either bronchospasm or vasospasm. So either he gets a heart attack after some time or he gets a asthma. We are manufacturing asthma now. 40% of patients on cholesterol lowering statins become diabetics in 1 year. We are manufacturing. Now 15 million people take statins in India. So we are making 1.5 million diabetics every year. Add to the statistics. Then Kadar as a health minister will say, this is the capital of diabetes. No, we are manufacturing diabetes. So don't do this kind of a thing. Find out what is good for what system, and the nurse will be a direct, and people sit there, and in no time you have a beautiful taluka hospital. Supposing a patient has a heart attack, you can always summon the ambulance from the district hospital and transport him there. It's cheaper than having a heart attack center in every taluka hospital. We don't understand, but the ego. The local taluka hospital man may be the health minister. So he says, in my constituency, I must have a heart attack center. See, this is where medicine is killed. Where's Kadar God? This is where medicine is killed. Don't do that. Lose your ego and look after the world. And health is not any one of the definitions that you give. We have now submitted a new definition to the IOM for health, which is accepted. It's called enthusiasm to work and enthusiasm to be compassionate. That's health. Very simple. You know what the meaning of the word enthusiasm? Little girl there, yeah, you, why do you look that side? I'm asking you. That's right. Behind the professor. Enthusiasm, matlab kya hai? What's the meaning of the word enthusiasm? Sit down and answer. Don't worry. En in Latin means inside. Theos means God. So God is sitting inside and provoking you. So enthusiasm to work. If all of us are healthy in India, 1.3 billion human beings with 2 hands, and all have enthusiasm to work, 2.6 billion hands can work this country and make it a heaven. Enthusiasm to be compassionate. When once you say, I must help others, paropakarathamidam shariram, you have no ISIS, you have no terrorism, you have no hatred, you have no cow killing or no man killing, no other things. Everybody likes everybody. This is accepted now as the new definition of health, which doesn't require you to go to the doctor for checkup. Get up in the morning and say, do I want to go to work today? If the answer is yes, you are healthy. Do I want to be compassionate to somebody? Yeah. You see an accident on the roadside and say, oh my God, poor man, and then go ahead. Or you see a girl being pulled for raping, you say, and take a picture, and then that girl is taken and she is raped. No, compassionate. Compassion is really get involved and then see that unfortunate people are helped. This is health. So friends, all systems are free, and naturopathy is the best, one of the best systems for the simple reason that it relies on. Don't get excited. I'll have to tell you the truth also. It depends on nature. If the nature is not spoiled by man, naturopathy is the only system needed. But today, nature is so badly spoiled. The water you drink is contaminated with chemicals. The air you breathe is so polluted. The food you eat is almost chemicals. An American child, newborn child in the cord blood has 247 banned chemicals. You will be surprised. You put that powder into the baby, and the baby is born, some powder name, and like that. That has got so many carcinogens. One of the important causes of breast cancer is baby talcum powder. You put nice lipstick. There's the latest now, because from France you learnt it. Lipstick contains so much of arsenic and so much of pro-estrogens that the breast keeps on becoming bigger, and one of the provocators for breast cancer is the lipstick. You put nice kajal, and that girl knows that number 0 size girl comes and like that she says 22 hours kajal full of lead poisoning. They say arsenic in the lips and lead in the eyes. Where is naturopathy? So naturopathy will fail because nature has been spoiled. So if you want naturopathy alone to help people, nature must be virgin nature, which it is not. But naturopathy can try to increase the immune system. If the immune system is increased, diseases get cured. I'll tell you something. They did a study in Cambridge, Oxford, Munich and Cambridge on how to treat drugs. Cancer pain is the worst pain. So they ran a drip of morphia, which is the best drug, right? You all study that? Morphia is the best drug, right? But they told the patient who believed the doctor, he had faith in the doctor, they said, this is not morphine, this is a new vitamin we have found out, which will help your cancer, but not your pain will not go. Nobody's pain went. He was having morphia going in intravenously, pain continuing. Then they took over the patient, what's called the died over patient, and ran a drip of saline, ordinary saline, salt water. And they told the patient, this is a salt of morphine, which will remove your pain. Pain went. So they were nonplussed. It's a very important study. Then they said, how did it happen? Did we make a mistake? So they did an fMRI for the patient, repeated the study. With an fMRI there, they found out when the patient believed his doctor that it is not morphia, in fact it was morphia, the brain slept. When the patient believed it is morphia, when it was only saline, the anterior brain, the forebrain, produced so much of opioids that the pain disappeared. In short, the diseases get cured not because of what medicine you give, but because of the faith in the doctor. So if you are a good human being as a naturopath, and if you are able to convince your patient that you are doing good for him, he or she will get better. That's where naturopathy is good. But if you are a bad human being, you are a very bad naturopath. Second thing is, don't say naturopathy can cure everything. A patient with cancer comes, he says, don't worry, I will put mud pack. You put mud pack till the patient dies. I still remember during the early part of this college, I was the principal of the medical college in Bangalore. One day Hegde called me and said, I have a bad patient, please can do something. This boy was brought, student. He had some tummy ache. So these people would mud pack, and he had an appendicular abscess which burst and became peritonitis. He became unconscious at that stage. So you must know what you are treating with. Remember that? Have humility. If something you don't understand, don't stand on your arrogance and naturopathy will cure everything. You say, take another advice. That is where the Taluka hospital concept that I am thinking of will help, because he as an MBBS doctor, he can say, doctor, just he has got a pain abdomen, just find out what he has got before I put the mud pack. And the doctor says, okay, this I am suspecting a appendicular abscess, so let us not put the mud pack, let us do something. See, the patient is saved. That is why our ego must go first. And now everything will be alright. So I think I have given some points for our young budding MBBS doctors. Already I can see their ego has come down a bit. Beginning they are sitting like that, now they are bent a little. And the day you leave your ego, I tell you, you become a human being. Your ego, you are not a human being. Shakespeare wrote, man, proud man. Man includes woman also. He was not a chauvinistic pig. Man, proud man, dressed with the briefs and authority. I become a minister. His glassy essence, like an angry ape, performs such fantastic tricks in its high heavens that even makes the angels weep. Even God is crying heavily, my God, look at this fellow, his ego is so much. So that we must give up. And the beauty is a person who loves everyone. Universal compassion. A person who loves working. And that's exactly what says enthusiasm to work. In every language, every religion, you tell God, provoke me to do something good. That is the, if you want, I don't know the real stanza in the Quran, but there is one, I know. But in the Ishopanisha, there's a beautiful thing. It says, Om Bhurbuha Swaha Tat Saviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimai Diya Yona Prachodayat. God, provoke me to do something good. That's what you pray God in the morning. That's what Jesus says. Let the Lord be praised. No, sister? Good. Let the Lord be praised. And it also says, enthusiasm, compassion. It's not for thee alone. Pass it on. Right? And Kadar will know what's called, you have to give a part of your income to others. Zukat. What a beautiful thought. No religion is separate. They're all one. They all think, they look at the same thing with different angles. That's all. What a beautiful idea. And it beautifully says, Zukat. And also says, you help others. It's not for thee alone, Jesus said. So, Ishopanisha says, Ishavasam idam sarvam. Everything belongs to God. Tena, tyaktena, bhunjita. Rejoice in giving, not in taking. Supposing you now give me one good meal in Dharmasala. I will be thinking, why didn't I get a better meal than this? Supposing you don't, I am able to give a meal to a person who has not had 2 meals. I am so happy I have been able to give a meal to a person who has been hungry. So be a giver. And simple formula I tell you for naturopaths or any human being, Ayurveda's principle. Hita, Mita, Ahara, Sevi. Eat food in moderation. Samikshakari, work very hard. Data, be a giver. Sama, treat everyone as equal. The minute you see the big man, you say, sir, and you see a small man, hey, no, you are not a very good man. Samaha, Satyapara, always tell the truth, because truth doesn't have to be remembered. If you tell a lie, it's a stress because you have to remember it. Next time somebody asks, the same lie must come, no? So lie raises your blood pressure. That's why the lie detector test, when the blood pressure goes up and down, you say that lie or... So, Sama Satyapara. Kshamavan. You can be a good man, but someone else may be angry with you. He will shout at you. So like that man who called me an idiot, I'm very happy because if you know who you are, why are you worried about what others call you? If you don't know what you are, then of course you get angry. You know, if you have a doubt whether you're an idiot or not, then when he calls you an idiot, how did he find out the truth? I'm very angry. I wrote to that man, don't worry, you may call me an idiot, but I know what I am, so why worry? So I always tell people, if I'm a monkey, I accept I'm a monkey. So I'm happy. My blood pressure is normal. Supposing I'm a monkey and try to force to the world that I'm a tiger, every second I'm tense because my monkeyness should not be seen. So, Shamavan. Then what does it say? Aptopa sevi bhavet arogyam. Treat this whole world as your near and dear ones. Not only your wife and children, husband and wife, but the whole world is mine. Everybody is mine own. And this is the thing. I always tell people, I, illness. We, wellness. That's all the difference. Thank you very much. Good luck. Godspeed.